She didn't even let the engine cool. Karen stormed into my driveway screaming, phone in the air, yelling, "Seize the truck right now, it's an HOA violation." Two men in cheap uniforms jumped out behind her, hands already on my vintage truck like it was theirs. One of them said, "Sir, step back or you'll be detained." My kid was standing on the porch behind me, holding his backpack, frozen. I looked at the badge on that man's chest. Plastic, crooked, wrong. Karen smiled like she'd already won. "You people never learn," she said. "This neighborhood is under our control." I stayed calm, slow breath, hands open. I asked one simple thing. "Before you touch my truck, can you tell me which agency you work for?" The fake cop hesitated. Karen snapped, "Don't answer him, just do it!" That's when I reached into my jacket. Not fast, not dramatic, and pulled out my federal badge. The sound of it clicking open was louder than her voice. One of the men went pale. The other took a step back. Karen laughed. For half a second. Then she went quiet. And I said the line that changed everything. "You just tried to steal federal property on my land." Karen snapped out of it fast and started yelling louder, like noise could fix her mistake. "That badge is fake," she shouted, pointing at me. "He's lying. Tow the truck now." One of the fake cops reached for his radio, then remembered he didn't have one. Instead, he pulled out his phone and pretended to talk. A tow truck rolled in like it was already planned. Chains hit my tires. My kid whispered, "Dad, are they taking it?" I didn't answer. Karen walked close and said low, mean, "That truck doesn't belong here." "Neither do you." She slapped a red notice on my door, saying my home was under seizure. Neighbors came out. Phones came up. Karen loved it. "This is what happens when you break HOA rules," she said. I watched the tow arm lift my truck an inch off the ground. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. One short message, one name I hadn't seen in years. I looked at Karen and said quietly, "You should stop this. Right now." She laughed and said the line she would regret forever. "Who's going to stop me?" Before she could finish smiling, a black SUV turned into the street without lights or sirens. It parked wrong, half on the grass, like it didn't care about rules. Two real officers stepped out. Not rushed. Not loud. Calm. One of them looked at the tow truck first, then at the fake cops, then at Karen. "Who called this in?" he asked. Karen rushed over, voice sweet now. "I did. He's stealing HOA property." The officer didn't answer her. He looked straight at me. "Sir, are you the owner of that truck?" I nodded. "Since 1978. My father bought it after. Vietnam." Karen rolled her eyes. "That doesn't matter." The officer finally looked at her. "It matters a lot." He asked the fake cops for IDs. One stepped back. The other said, "We're with the HOA." The officer paused, then smiled in a way that wasn't friendly. "HOA doesn't have police powers." He turned to me. "Mind if I see that badge again?" I handed it over. He checked it once, then stood straighter. "Federal," he said quietly. The crowd went silent. Karen's face drained. She whispered, "This isn't over." I looked at my truck hanging in the air and said, "It just started." Karen stepped back like the ground moved under her. She tried to laugh it off. "Badges don't scare me," she said, but her hand was shaking. The tow driver froze, hands still on the controls. One of the fake cops started talking fast. "We were told this was legal." The real officer cut him off. "By who?" Silence. I walked closer to my truck. The old engine was still warm. Someone had tried to force the door. I didn't say anything. I just pointed at the scratch. The officer followed my finger, then looked at Karen. "Did you authorize this?" She snapped, "The HOA voted." I shook my head. "This road isn't HOA land." She laughed again. "Prove it." I pulled out my phone, slow, calm. I didn't open maps. I opened a federal registry file. The officer leaned in. His partner whistled under his breath. Karen's smile cracked. "That's fake," she said, louder now. I looked at her and said, "That file is why this land can't be touched." The officer nodded once. "Protected corridor," he said. "Federal." Karen's voice dropped to a whisper. "No one told us." I looked at her. "You didn't ask." Karen suddenly stepped forward and pointed at me. "He's lying!" she shouted. He forged that. "Arrest him now!" One of the fake cops reached for my arm. That's when the real officer moved fast. He pushed the man back and said, "Don't touch him." The crowd had grown quiet. Phones were up. Karen's face turned red. "This truck violates HOA rules," she yelled. "We warned him." I looked at my truck again, then at her. "You sent that warning to my kid," I said. The officer looked at me. "Your kid?" I nodded. "Left it on his bike," Karen snapped. "That's not true." I reached into the truck and pulled out the paper, crumpled, orange. The officer read it. His jaw tightened. "This notice has a fake seal," he said. Karen took a step back. "It came from the board." The officer turned to the fake cops. "Names now!" One of them ran. Just turned and ran down the road. The other froze. Karen screamed, "Stop him!" No one moved. The officer looked at Karen and said, calm but sharp, "Ma'am, you just crossed a line." I leaned against my truck and said quietly, "This isn't about rules anymore." Karen laughed, but it sounded wrong. Too loud, too fast. "You can't scare me," she said. "This neighborhood is private." The officer didn't answer her. He was already on his radio. "County, I need backup. Possible impersonation." Karen's smile slipped. She looked at me and lowered her voice. "You think a badge makes you special?" I didn't reply. I just opened the truck door. Inside, the dashcam light was still blinking red, recording. Her eyes locked on it. "Turn that off," she snapped. I shook my head. "It turns itself on when someone threatens my property." She stepped closer. "You don't belong here. People like you never do." The words hung in the air. The crowd reacted. A few gasps, a few angry murmurs. The officer heard it too. He turned slowly and said, "Ma'am, repeat that." Karen crossed her arms. I said what I said. Right then, a black SUV rolled in and stopped hard behind her. 2 doors opened. One man in a suit, one in uniform. The suited man looked straight at me and nodded. "Sorry I'm late," he said. Karen turned pale. "Who are they?" I finally spoke. "The people who own the land. And the case." The suited man didn't rush. He walked slow, like he already knew how this would end. He looked at the tow truck, the fake cops, the crowd, then at Karen. "Ma'am," he said, calm. "Step away from the vehicle." She snapped back. "You don't have authority here." He smiled once, not kind. He pulled out a badge of his own. Gold, heavy. The real officer straightened again. "Department head," he said under his breath. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. The suited man turned to me. "They tried to seize your truck?" I nodded. "And broke into my home last month?" Karen jumped in fast. "That's a lie!" The man raised one finger. She stopped talking. He looked at the dash cam, then at the officer. "Run the footage." A minute later, Karen's voice echoed from the speaker. Yelling orders, telling the fake cops to hurry, laughing when my door cracked. The crowd shifted. Phones got closer. The suited man looked back at her. "You authorized impersonation. You ordered an illegal seizure. And you targeted a protected owner." Karen's knees shook. "I didn't know who he was," she whispered. The man shook his head. "That's the problem." He nodded to the officer. "Cuff her." As they led her away, I rested my hand on the hood of my truck and said the line my father taught me long ago. This land remembers who stood for it. The snow started falling again, slow and quiet, like the valley was finally breathing. Karen was gone. The fake cops were gone. The tow truck drove off empty. The crowd stayed a moment, then clapped, not loud but real. The department head shook my hand and said, "Your truck stays, your land stays, and your family stays safe." I watched my kid run up the road, scarf flying, smiling like none of this scared him anymore. I lifted him up and he said, "Dad, are they gone for good?" I nodded. "Yeah, they're done." A week later, the HOA board dissolved. The news called it corruption. Neighbors called it justice. I called it peace. That old truck still sits in my driveway, snow on the hood, engine strong. Every time I turn the key, I remember one thing my father used to say, and now I say it too. You don't need power to stand your ground. You just need the truth.